So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
The opening half hour brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee, and a terrific service department, whether it happens to be quick lane inspections, routine, difficult. They handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. One of the true legends passed away over the weekend, D. Wayne Lukas, and joining us now, Dick Jerardi, and DJ sent me the article that he wrote, which was incredible. DJ, how do you put into the proper words what Lukas meant to the sport and how he humanized the sport?
Right. So for the people that don't follow horse racing, Steve, in the 1980s and 1990s, he was to horse racing what Michael Jordan was to basketball. He was just that big. He won his first Preakness in 1980 with a horse named Codex. And the amazing thing about Wayne is he didn't keep winning at the level he did in the 80s and the 90s when at one point he won 6 Triple Crown races in a row with 4 different horses. But he stayed around for another 20 years and was still out there. And he won his first Preakness in 1980 and his last one in 2024. So he was 44 when he won his first and 88, or 44 years later when he won his last. So the longevity, the fact that he, in the 80s and 90s, when very few horses left their own area, he was the first guy that put horses on a plane. If he thought the better race for a horse was in New York and his horse was in California, he put him on a plane and run him in a stake race in New York. They actually used to call it D. Wayne off the plane, like, go to the windows and start betting. So there was that. He brought a completely different style. He would show up on race day dressed like a Hollywood actor, and he'd have the aviator shades, and he attracted big money. His first really big money client was Gene Klein, of course, that San Diego Chargers, and Winning Colors, who won the '88 Derby. And he would do things that were very unconventional. He would run fillies against colts, and he had the last filly to win the Derby in Winning Colors, as I said, in 1988. And yeah, just an amazing career. And Steve, as I let off the story, I saw him at the Preakness. I spent a little time with him 2 days before the Preakness. He had a horse in the Preakness this year, and he would have turned 90 right around Labor Day, and he was still out there until he just couldn't be out there anymore.
If I read it correctly, I believe he started in quarter horses and then moved from there. And I think Bob Baffert also started in quarter horses. How did that set him up because he did that?
It's So, yeah, that's right. And I think he and Baffert a unique look at thoroughbreds when they moved over. Their whole game, Steve, is speed. They're looking for fast horses that can get near the lead. And how many times have you and I talked about that in basketball, play with the lead? In horse racing, it's even more important because horses that get behind and get dirt thrown in their face, they often get discouraged. So quarter horse is the races there is 440 yards. It's all speed. I mean, it's just one, just get out and go as fast as you can. And Wayne grew up in Wisconsin around horses. Actually, was a high school basketball coach for quite a while. Coached for the University of Wisconsin grad. And he became a horse guy just because he'd been around horses, and then he got into training quarter horses. Won all the big races. Had a horse called Dash for Cash, who was one of the legendary quarter horses, and then transitioned to thoroughbreds in the late '70s, and it was around for a half a century. And Stevie's the only guy in the Thoroughbred Hall of Fame and the Quarter Horse Hall of Fame.
And there's also, like with any great coach has people who then become part of the legacy because they go on to greatness themselves. He has a long list of people that work with him that are now great trainers in their own right.
There's no question his coaching tree is unparalleled in the history of the sport. And again, because he had horses all over the country. He'd have a division in California, Kentucky, New York, New Jersey. He needed somebody to run him, right? He couldn't be – Wayne's base for the longest time was in California until he moved to the Midwest and Kentucky later on. And his number one assistant in New York was Todd Pletcher. And, of course, Todd has gone on to break all the records. He holds his horses have won more money than any trainer in history. And one of the reasons Wayne doesn't hold that record is the money just wasn't as big in the 80s and 90s as it is now. And Todd Pletcher's number one assistant for years was Michael McCarthy, who, of course, had journalism in the Triple Crown races this year. So I think, as I wrote in there, in horse racing terms, Wayne would be Michael McCarthy's grandsire.
Right.
And he's got a number of other great trainers, Mike Baker, Kieran McLaughlin, Del Stewart. I mean, they're just everywhere, all over the country, the Wayne tree. And sadly, Steve, probably his best assistant was his son, Jeff, who was basically responsible for a lot of things. And Jeff got run over by a horse named Tabasco Cat at Santa Anita in the early 90s. And was never really the same, and was able to live out, but died young, died in his 50s, and that's the one that, the what if. And I don't know that Wayne ever got over it, but and I knew Jeff well. Jeff was a hell of a guy. And Tabasco Cat, after all that, ended up winning the Preakness and the Belmont the next year.
That's right. I remember all that, which is remarkable. When you're 89. And you're in it on an everyday basis. I mean, this is obviously conjecture. Well, what do you think it did to his quality of life because he was so involved in it and loved it so much?
It's a really good question, Steve. And I think there were a number of great stories that for people to read that have been written this last week. And obviously, we knew last Sunday when they put out the release saying Wayne was going to home hospice and they weren't going to try to treat his heart condition. That it probably wasn't going to be long. There's people that are singularly dedicated to their craft. That was all he did. It was his everything, which is one of the reasons he was divorced 4 times. His most recent wife, Laurie, who was with him for quite a long time, I think he helped mellow Wayne toward the end. Yeah. But, Steve, this is a wild story. 10 years ago, he's at Parks for the PA Derby, and he doesn't show up the day of the race, which is like, what? And we were all concerned about him. It turned out his heart, and I don't know if this has ultimately led to the problems that caused his demise here, but his heart was, he was racing. He was doing all kind of things, like the kind of things where you're supposed to go to the hospital. Yeah. Except he didn't go. He was going to get in a van and ride home to Kentucky. Finally, he was talked into going to the hospital near the track, and he went, ended up he had a number of bypasses and stents, and a pacemaker put in. And I went to visit him in the hospital the next day. I said, wait, When was the last time you saw a doctor? He said he thought it was 60 years ago. He said this is when he was 80, right, or 79.
Oh,
I said, come on, man, what are you doing? But whatever they did, they gave him another 10 years. And I will say this. Every time I saw him, Steve, maybe up into this year's Preakness, when you could see, I didn't know this was going to happen, you could see he was a little more frail. He certainly mentally, he was as sharp as ever, but he was using a cane, and he never said anything. But my guess is this didn't happen like in the last week. My guess is it had been brewing for a while.
Yeah. Well, for him, what was it like to coach humans, which he did, and to essentially coach jockeys and horses, and why were horses more rewarding to him?
Yeah, it's another really good question. I think he just wanted to be around animals, right? I mean, he's certainly a good people person. Sure. Although his personality changed dramatically in the last 20 years when he became everybody's favorite uncle and grandfather. He was pretty irascible for the first 20, 25 years of his career, because it took him a while to win the Derby, and people said, oh, he's like, Luke, you can't win the big one. I mean, we've all been through that before. And so he would get angry, and he did some things he probably should have done, probably ran some horses in places shouldn't have been run, and he would take offense at it. But over time, it was interesting when his owners started to pass away. A lot of his owners were older than he was. Then all of a sudden, he didn't have the kind of horses he had before, but he still wanted to be at the track. He just liked the action. And his personality, again, he was always quotable. It wasn't like he wouldn't answer the phone or he wouldn't talk to you, but it just softened over time. And he was, and I pointed out in the story that I wrote, we interviewed him a couple days before last year's Pennsylvania Derby, and it was astonishing. Steve, he was 80. He had just turned 89. And it was like, really? I mean, I noticed no difference in the guy I knew 40 years ago when he first came around the track, or when I first noticed him when he first became a Triple Crown player. Mentally, nothing had ever changed. And it's kind of cool for Pennsylvania that his last Grade 1 race is going to be the 2024 Pennsylvania Derby that he won with Seize the Gray, the horse that won the Preakness last year.
Yeah, and I was about to ask that question, was about the role that the Pennsylvania Derby Parks played at points in his career.
Yeah, I tell you what, he really liked it for a couple of reasons. Mostly there was a bonus for any horse that won a Triple Crown race or the Travers or the Haskell. If all the horse had to do was come out of the starting gate and the trainer got $50,000, and Wayne did like the casino. He liked the slot machines. So, yeah, he definitely liked to come to Parks. He would come even when he wasn't getting the bonus, but, yeah, he definitely liked it. And another thing that probably needs to be pointed out, and I hadn't thought of this, but my friend Jay Prittman wrote this in a racing forum, the Triple Crown has always been big in horse racing, but it got way bigger in the 80s and 90s because of Wayne Lukas. Yeah. It was just such a thing that all of a sudden he started, as we said, he won 6 Triple Crown races with 4 different horses. It was kind of like the Tiger Slam, right? It was the Wayne Slam. It was the Wayne Crown. He didn't win 3 in succession in the same year like Baffert did twice, but I think he really aided, certainly Churchill Downs, which has been his home track for a while now, they really benefited by the presence of Wayne Lukas in the 80s and 90s. And obviously the Triple Crown over the last 25 years has just become bigger and bigger and bigger. That's why when Wayne first got there, and this is when I first went to Churchill Downs, the only thing you could see at that racetrack from the backstretch was the twin spires, and now you can barely see them at all because they're dwarfed by all the buildings. Right.
No, exactly. It's been a long time since I've been to Churchill Downs. And I remember that's what stuck out to me was seeing the twin spires. So everybody has their own personality in the sport. You've talked about Wayne Lukas's personality. Baffert has his personality. Pletcher does. Obviously, you introduced me to Michael McCarthy. So as time went, you say he mellowed a lot. What was it about his previous personality before he mellowed that drew people to him?
He would say stuff, quotable.
Okay.
He spoke in complete sentences. He was obviously a very well-educated guy. And you ask him a good question, he'd give you a good answer, insightful, and occasionally combative, which is fine. It's part of the deal. Like, again, when you question him, there was I think a couple different people mentioned in their stories. I'm going to lose track of the year, but he had this streak, Steve, of running a horse in the Derby, like maybe 20 years in a row, and he was proud of it. Well, to keep the streak going, he ran this horse called Deeds Not Words, who had no business being in the race, and he took a lot of heat that week, especially in the Louisville papers. Pat Forty was working there then, Rick Bozich. I mean, guys, serious people. And Wayne, in fact, I didn't realize this. Pat wrote about it last week in SI.com that Wayne threatened to have a fight with him. Because he was basically trashing Wayne, but that was him. And one of his best buddies was Bobby Knight, and of course Bloomington back in the day, not far from Louisville. And I was there one year when he brought Knight around. It might have, in fact, you know what? It might have been '87 after they won the Keith Smart title. I think Knight came down that year. I remember talking to him about basketball. But yeah, they were buddies. But yeah, he could get angry again, which is fine. That's part of it.
When he mellowed, you talk about interviewing me. You saw no difference in him. When he mellowed, was he the same interview or was he a better interview?
I thought he was always good. I think he was more accessible, and you never felt like you were in any kind of a combat toward the end. There were times, I can remember some years when I went to the Derby when he had like some long shots. I just didn't bother with him. I just said, I don't need the aggravation. I'll go cover what I think are the stories. Sure. And of course, one of those years he won the Derby at 31-1 with Charismatic, a horse I never even thought about before the race, and he damn near won the Triple Crown with him. But yeah, I just think toward the end, it was clear he wanted to be there. He wanted to be around it. As he said, he just loved the competition. And the fact that, it looked like he was never going to win another big race. I mean, it really did. He was down to just about nothing. And then he won the Kentucky Oaks with a filly named Secret Oath in 2022. Mm-hmm. And then he comes back and wins the Preakness at 88 years old last year. I mean, that'll be one record I can guarantee you will never be topped. Nobody's winning a Triple Crown race at 88 again. Right. And I remember when I wrote my story, I said, and I mentioned it earlier, he won his first one at 44, his last one at 88. That's amazing. 44 years between. And the Kentucky Oaks was similar. He won his first one 40 years before he won his last one.
Last one. Bob Baffert's won a couple of Triple Crowns. Lukas, I think, won 15 of the Triple Crown races, but obviously not the Triple Crown. Did it ever bother him that he never got a Triple Crown winner?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm sure somebody asked it. I never did. The fact that he did win the 6 in a row, so he won a Preakness, a Belmont. He actually won a Triple Crown one year, but with two different horses.
Right, exactly.
He won all three in 1995, and then he won the Derby again in 96. So, yeah, that's kind of an accomplishment that's impossible to top. But, yeah, it probably did because, look, he was Mr. Triple Crown. And then this guy, who basically followed the path and emulated Wayne in just about every way, quarter horses, thoroughbreds in California. And Bob, his first Derby was 96 with a horse called Cavanier, who lost by a nose to Grindstone. Yes. And that was Lukas. Lukas beat Baffert by a nose, and I remember Baffert after the race said, I'll never win this race again. I'll never win this race. Well, he won the next two, and he's won more than anybody. So, yes, Wayne has won 15 Triple Crown races. Baffert's won 17. And they were big rivals, big rivals in California. The last 15 years, they're best friends. And when Baffert had all his troubles the last couple of years, the one person in horse racing who went out of his way to defend Baffert was Wayne Lukas.
Says it all. That says it all. Okay, when you got that, that tells you everything about the quality of the man. My friend, always a pleasure. Great article, and obviously it was about one of the true greats in the history of the sport.
No question. Yeah, and he transcended horse racing. People knew him. You didn't have to be in horse racing. You knew who D. Wayne was. There's no doubt. That's exactly right. DJ, thanks so much. You got it. Thanks, Steve. The great Dick Jerardi talking about the legendary D. Wayne Lukas, who passed away over the weekend at the age of 89. This half hour brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.